Hey everyone, this is DP Lyle, and we are here in Denver, Colorado at Left Coast Crime, and we're at the Outliers Writing University studio. And as you know, Terry Shepard, my partner over here in crime, is the guy that's been running this thing all week, and now we're going to turn the tables on him. Terry, you're on the hot seat, okay?
It's only fair, isn't it?
It is only fair. Uh, Terry's kind of a guru in anything you want, audio, video, whatever you want. He's the guy we call, and he's helped us so much. I mean, like putting this together. So when did you get started and interested in all this AV world?
Well, I was very lucky because when I was a very young guy, one of my dad's best friends ran the University of Michigan Television Center. It was on Maynard Street in Ann Arbor. That building is now a bar. It's now a Dooley's bar. But back then, black and white TV was a big thing. And my first encounter over there was when I was in elementary school until fourth grade. I went to the University of Michigan's elementary school. They had a laboratory school for the kids of professors. And my dad was a professor at the beginning of that time. And we had a very good storyteller, Mary Ann Stevenson. And one of the things that they decided to do was they decided to make a video of her telling a story. I'm not sure what they were wrapping it around, but they needed some kids for the audience. And that was my first time in that studio, Doug. And I was fascinated, like we were talking with S.J. Roseanne about her days in the peanut gallery with Howdy Doody, that this magic was happening in these big metal boxes that were sliding around the studio. And so because I recognized that my dad's best friend was the guy who ran that, I would go over there every chance I got. And I said, that's what I want to do for a living.
Well, here we are. We're sitting here in a room in the Westin Hotel in Denver, and we have a Mac Air in front of us.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing this on.
Yeah.
Let's flash back to then, the video and the audio. How was that done back then, and how cumbersome was it to create both of those, sync them up, and make a finished product that made sense?
Well, if you make a parallel to our writing lives, Doug, and even to your medical lives, this is not something we do alone, right? So back then, there were the people that helped you point the cameras in the right position. You had the sound guy that had the boom mic over the top. But behind all that was the technology. Every one of those cameras, there was the box out on the floor, but there were racks of tubes and transistors and stuff back in the back that had a huge air conditioning system to keep them cool. And they all fed into this huge tape recorder. It was a 2-inch videotape quadruplex that had this little head that was spinning around at a huge rate to be able to have a high enough resolution back then for what was 525 lines of resolution. What we're recording in right now on a free piece of software called OBS is 10,080 lines. So it's over twice the size of what we thought was pretty cool back then. And even back then, places that did not have those 2-inch quad recorders, they were very expensive. The tape was super expensive. That's why we don't have a lot of old Tonight shows, because they reused the tapes. What they would do, and maybe you remember this from your youth, is they'd point a 16 millimeter camera at a very special television screen that had higher resolution, and they would record what were called kinescopes. Mm-hmm. And that's what we would see in the classroom when we'd watch some of these TV shows then. And our eyes adjusted to it. We're a lot more forgiving with video than we are with audio. And so by then, of course, those of us that are old enough to remember or even listen to some of the golden age of radio programs, they had a lot more development of the audio side. And another parallel with writing, you remember when audiobooks first came out, they were books on tape.
Yep.
And we would subscribe and they'd get something in the mail with these big old box of cassettes, an hour a piece. And if we were lucky, we had a cassette in our car and we put it in there and we'd listen to them when we drive. And now those things, you could put everything that was a books on tape thing onto a single jump drive today.
Oh, yeah.
That's how things have changed.
Or your iPhone.
Yeah.
So if you're one of the courses, I have them all on my iPhone.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and if you're creative, just think of the freedom that gives you. One of my best friends we've interviewed is Donna Wilberg, who's a movie producer. And for me to be on the set with her, to see what they can do.
And back in the early days, What was the editing process like where you had that? Was it literally take scissors and cellophane tape?
Well, that was even on the early days of videotape. That's what they did.
Sure.
But you got to accept change, right?
So the writers out there that are listening to all this, they always want to figure out how they're going to market more, how they're going to interact with their readers more, how are they going to sell more books, et cetera, et cetera. And YouTube things like that and some of the video stuff and podcasting and all of that obviously is big. If an author wanted to do that, what 2 or 3 programs or things would you recommend if you're going to jump into this world? Would you recommend that they look at, learn how to use, and move forward?
There's a fundamental misconception about all this, Doug, and that is that the books are the thing. They are not the thing. You are the thing. If you think about how we remember the greatest writers out there, when you say James Patterson or when you say Lee Child or when you say Megan Abbott, things come to mind. And those people are the personalities. They say, I feel like I need to read a Megan Abbott book right now, right? So, and part of that is, if you look at James is probably arguably the most financially successful writer now. Mm-hmm. It's because he was a marketing guy.
Yes.
So he understands that you need to first decide whether you're going to write for yourself or make a living and write to an audience. And if you're going to write to an audience, you need to do the work up front. Strategy comes before product, right?
Right.
And you got to decide if that's your why. I mean, the biggest question I'll ask new writers, or I ask on my podcast, is why you write? What was the draw for you to do that? And then you need to figure out who the audience is. So one of the things that I've discovered when I started writing, I'm very much a feminist and an equality guy. So I wanted to have my stories populated with women, smart women, and people with disabilities, minorities, and I wanted to make them heroes. Hopefully people who read my books will look at them and say, maybe I could grow up to be like them. But when you're starting from scratch with somebody like Jessica Ramirez, there's no audience. But the stuff that seems to be selling now is the how-to. Last year I wrote How to Be a Dynamic Podcast Guest and Sell Stuff, where we talk about these very things. And it's very short. And I even put all the recommendations on the first page because I know a lot of people never get past the cover of the first page. And so I say, this is the microphone you need to buy if you're starting. And this is, you're dressed better than the room. You have to memorize your elevator speech, blah, blah, blah. I tell all that stuff from my years as a podcaster, as an interviewer and being interviewed were things that helped me that I learned the hard way. And a lot, I priced it at $1.99 digital. I didn't want the price to be, so I make very little on it, but it sold very well.
Good.
And then the next thing, that everybody wants to be a podcaster. Well, as you've discovered from doing it, everything from strategy to recording to editing and preparation, distribution and promotion, those all have best practices out there.
Oh yeah.
And most people think, I'll do a podcast. Oh, I'll go to StreamYard. I'll record it. I'll run it live on, YouTube. It's a lot more than that. If you want to have a podcast that people will probably, when I was doing my research on this, there are probably something like every day 300 new podcasts that come on, and there are 400 that fall off.
Yes.
So you got to know how to do it right, and that's what my humble attempt was in Terry Shepard's podcast Essentials.
Where can people find you, find out about you, find your books, do all that stuff?
The other secret that I tell people is have everybody come to one place. So I am on all the social media platforms because I'm a nerd. And that's another thing to think about is if you're going to get on a platform, you have to engage. You have to learn the language. You have to learn how to do it. And you have to be active. But I send everybody to terryshepard.com. My email is terry@terryshepard.com. Links to everything, my narrations, my podcast, all the stuff that I do is there. And it's easy to find. One click away.
This has been great, my friend.
Thank you.
It's always good to talk to you.
It's great to
sit on the other side, right?
Yeah. I much prefer when it's not about me, but when I get a chance to talk to somebody close to my own age, it's a friend. It's always better. Thank you.
Well, it was fun. Thank you. Well, this has been a great chat with the great Terry Shepard here at Left Coast Crime 2025 in Denver on the Outliers Writing University studio.